Hello and welcome to Gardening Australia. Another week, another wheelbarrow full of gardening inspiration. We've got a packed show, so let's have a look at what's in store this week.
Look at this place. It's massive. I met a couple with the drive and nous to create a grand-scale, rambling country garden and find out how they've done it.
Have a look at this beautiful archway that's been formed out of these two apple trees that have been trained in the old technique of espaliering. And I've got a few tips that'll hopefully mean you'll get the most out of your own espalier at home.
Have a look at these. Aren't they beautiful? They're terrariums that are planted out with local Indigenous plants. And I'm going to show you just how easy it is to make one.
I'm here in bustling inner Sydney to catch up with an avid gardener that we introduced you to on the show a few years back now. Former TV news anchor Indira Naidu is now more renowned for her small space gardening and the transformation of her tiny inner city balcony into a productive food hub that's harvesting over 70 kilos of produce a year. As one of our guest presenters this year, I thought it's time to go and see what she's up to. Whoa, Indira.
Costa, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Welcome to Gardening Australia.
Thank you. That was an amazing entry. You know, I do have a front door.
I just wanted to drop in and see where things were at.
Well, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So, Costa, while you were slipping out of your harness, I prepared a lovely, refreshing cocktail spritz for you with ingredients from the balcony, including a little bit of sprig of mint. Please enjoy. Tell me what you think.
Well, thank you. What's in there?
So it's some cucumber from the balcony, some mint and some lemon juice. Isn't it terrific?
Wow, that's really refreshing.
And it's all come from this 20 square metre space. So I'd love to show you what's growing in my garden, Costa.
Yeah, let's check it out.
So, Costa, this is the worm farm, which is very happy in this corner. All my scraps and cuttings go in and feed the worms. This is the vertical wall filled with shallow-rooted herbs and greens and lettuces. Been a bit affected by the heat wave, but that's a terrific way to use vertical space. Cardamom, I don't know if you've come across this before. Beautiful, fragrant leaf. I use it in a lot of my rice cooking. We've got the garlic chives that is doing really well. The beautiful chilli plant, these Thai chilies have got a real beautiful pungency. And of course my glorious 1 mile lemon that's left on the tree.
Believe me, it's not plastic.
Almost the size of a grapefruit by now.
You know, I still remember the bit of advice you gave me about the curry leaf plant with cooking.
They're amazing fragrant leaves that you fry in a little bit of oil. They flavour rice dishes and curries. I make a chicken curry with them. They're absolutely delicious. Obviously, as you can see, it grows really well in a pot. And this one's 3 metres high, provides beautiful shade for the rest of the plants. And even some birds will come and hide and roost inside the branches. So it's a lot of fun to have.
Since 5 years ago, when I last brought everyone here to see your balcony, you've really been consumed by the gardening bug and it's become your full-time career.
I have to admit, I was completely surprised how much I've loved it and how much of my life it has taken over. And since I last saw you, I've written a second book, and now I take garden workshops. People come here for tours to see the balcony, which is hilarious as well. And what's been really exciting is there are 8 or 9 other apartments now in this building that now have gardeners growing edibles as well. And we get together every couple of months and we have a shared lunch and we share our produce and our herbs. We leave it with the concierge downstairs for the other people in our building who thinks we're all nutty for growing food when we live above a supermarket. And it's really built a beautiful community, and I think that that's what I've been most touched by, that yes, it's lovely to have fresh herbs to pick for your meals in the evening, but it's so lovely to know your neighbours, to share your produce with them. That's another positive of gardening.
I love the thought that even at this level, at a building level, you can have a crop swap, but managed by the concierge.
Really, this apartment block is a vertical village. That's the way I look at it.
What themes are you going to expose us to from your take on the world and the garden world?
Well, as you would know, it's really exciting, this trend of people living in cities in small apartments wanting to grow things.
Well, the colour and the movement makes all the difference to a work of art.
I'll be visiting a colleague with an amazing vertical garden. We'll also see an old toxic dump that's been transformed into a stunning bird-filled wetland. I'll take you to an old factory that's now a restaurant with a full-time gardener, and you'll see this most amazing reflection garden high on the rooftop at a cancer centre. And I'm going to take you to see how food is being grown for those in need in the very heart of the city.
Well, Indira, welcome to the team.
Thank you.
I'm really looking forward to seeing your stories over the next few weeks. And look, with the weather changing like it has, I think I'm going to take your advice and leave with the lift.
And before you go, there's something I want you to try from my garden that we didn't get a chance. Take a little chew of that.
Rocket.
A type of rocket. Feeling the heat rising?
I'm off.
That's wasabi rocket. It's off.
Have a look at this beautiful archway that's been formed out of these two apple trees that have been trained in the old technique of espaliering. This is a technique where we as gardeners can really manipulate the shape of the tree. They're grown with a good strong central leader and then lateral arms grown horizontally. Basically the tree is grown flat. And I've got a few tips that'll hopefully mean you'll get the most out of your own espalier at home. You don't just want your tree to look good, it needs to be productive as well. And a well-trained espalier can be just as productive as a conventionally trained tree. Now I need to apologise for the look of these pears. They're suffering from pear and cherry slug. It's not terminal, but it makes them look pretty awful. Now these trees are great because they've just been planted a year ago and they've been trained quite well. There are many forms of espalier, but what I'm going to tell you is applicable to all of them. Now, one thing I've noticed when people espalier is they try too hard with the manipulation and they'll bend these main branches down lower than the point of this arm here. If that happens, all the growth will occur at the highest point. And in this particular style of espalier, we want even growth all the way along. You can see here, we've got a good handspan between the uprights, a good handspan there, a good handspan there, and a good handspan there. So, as far as pruning goes, we can take this little knobbly bit off just to even it all up. The other thing I like to do is start from the base of the tree. So we have here a bit of a sucker happening from the roots. That needs to come off, as well as any growth that's below these two main arms. So this here and this here. Now another little tip, what people do is when the growth is underneath the branch, which you don't really want, it either grows down or it grows back up again. So what you can do is simply go along and rub the buds off. This way, you won't have to prune these laterals next season. Really, all we're doing when we're training trees is redirecting its energies into where we want it to go. In this case, into its form and into its fruit.
I've just travelled 140 k's up the main North Road from Adelaide to the Clare Valley. The Banksia rose spilling over the fence on the corner is a great appetiser for what's to come, the Heritage Garden at Seven Hill.
I think we're influenced a lot by the English style of garden.
I love the softness of the English plants, and particularly the roses, which we've been growing for a long, long time.
Kay and Walt Duncan bought this 9-hectare property outside of Clare in 1999. And since then, they've turned 2.5 hectares into a massive garden, centred on a wonderful bluestone home. There's beds of roses, perennials and annuals, connected by sweeping lawns, as well as arches and arbours and dozens of trees.
The trees form the basis of the garden. They give it its backdrop and its strengths, don't they?
Yeah.
And the lawns give it the spaciousness. And then you've got the passion of the plants.
The underplanting, I think, is very important because it makes the whole thing part of a whole, rather than, look, here I'm a rose. You're just a rose in the garden, you're not totally the focal point.
It's the foxgloves and the delphiniums and the forget-me-nots too.
And even that little erigeron, the mother of all daisies, so easy to grow, and you can get a lot of it. And we've got a few poppies kicking around as well, which come up beautifully.
Now, this wisteria is such a feature of your garden. It's on the verandas, on arbours, and it's spectacular. But I do notice it's very controlled.
Yes, so we keep track of it. We prune it in the summer when it's got long lateral growth to keep it in check. And then again in the winter, I'll give it a tidy up just to make sure it's not going to go too far.
And that's how you can have maximum flowers and minimum growth.
Yes, I don't cut any of the flowering shoots off.
And do you fertilise it?
We feed it with the lawn. It gets a feed when the lawn gets fed.
Yep, so nothing specifically. A couple of times a year?
Once, I think, November, and not very much.
Yeah.
Otherwise, look out for the roof.
Although now retired, Walt once ran a nursery that produced 100,000 roses a year. And he's been honoured with awards from the World Rose Society, so his tips are worth listening to. Now, the roses aren't quite at their best just yet, but this rose is spectacular and very early.
Sophie, it's the first rose to flower in our garden each spring. Sometimes it can start flowering in late winter. It's an Alistair Clark rose and it's Lorraine Lee.
And this is a climbing form?
Yes, yeah, allowed to grow wild.
Wonderful. So, Walt, how do you feed your roses?
Sophie, we do it twice a year. Once just after pruning, which would probably be the third week of July or early August, depending on the season. You want to have it there to boost spring growth and not be carried away by winter rain, so you don't want to feed too early, but that's a good time. And then if you're looking for a flush in the autumn, another feeding should be done probably towards the end of February, early March.
Wonderful. And what do you use?
I thought you'd ask something like that. You know, a lovely organic, well-balanced fertiliser.
Specific for roses.
Specific for roses.
And boosted with potash.
My word.
Like all good rose growers would.
And applied with care.
And love. Parrots love young, sweet, tender growth on roses, but Walt has an effective method of dealing with them.
The grass parrots used to come in and just nip the tops of the buds off. You could have it beautiful one day and a bit of a mess the next. And we've run fishing line over the top of the plants. It's a 50-pound breaking strain line, and the parrots just fly into that and they go away. So you don't hurt the parrot and you save the rose.
Wonderful.
It's quite a good one to remember, that one.
Walt has lots of different varieties in his garden, but has a particular passion for old world roses.
I don't know whether you know that old rose over there, Madame L'Oreal de Barney.
It's a rugosa, isn't it, Walt?
Yeah, a lovely rugosa. They're very deep purpley red, and really the scent is just enough to drive you wild. It's beautiful.
And what about this Banksia, Kay? This is extraordinary.
Yes, it's very cheery rose at the end of winter. There's beautiful yellow flowers, and we've let it grow freely to form a bank of its own and block the southern wind from this part of the garden.
And now this is the most amazing axis. Tell us about this.
Well, the axis is very long. I think it's nearly 200 feet from stem to stern, but we narrowed it in the middle with the two urns, which makes it appear longer.
Is that
So
right?
it's an illusion for length, which I think is quite a good way of cheating if you've got a fairly small block.
Absolutely.
But that's growing well. It's got to souvenir de la Malmaison rose climbing on every arch, and really, when they're all in bloom, it looks something very special.
I bet.
You know,
That soft pink.
oh, beautiful.
And
Love
a
it.
beautiful scent too.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
One of the best.
And out here, an orchard of quince trees. What's the story with the quinces?
There's just over 200. Seems an awful lot when you start picking them.
So what do you do with all those quinces?
Well, Maggie Bear kindly takes them from us, and she makes the best quince paste in Australia. So keep on eating quince paste.
What a claim to fame. Awesome. Lastly, a very sparse garden room with a totally different feel.
We have really used the gravel to lead you through in this open area to the claret ash, which gives you shade in the summer, and then, of course, leafless in the winter, and then into the lovely candle pines, which they're a great backdrop, aren't they?
They're just stunning.
But, of course, probably the main feature of it is the wellhead.
How gorgeous. So what are you happiest about in the garden?
The serenity, and we really get a lot of pleasure out of sharing it with other people.
And of all the people that have come, I think probably one woman stood out in my mind at the end of an open day. She just didn't want to go home, although she had to. Thank goodness.
All gardens change, adapting over time as they settle in, and this garden is no different. In fact, there's change happening right over here. This garden's around 3 years old, and it's growing great guns. The heroes of the garden, the bones if you will, things like the trees and the vines, are going really strongly. Now you might remember, along here, I had a whole range of quick-growing, short-lived flowering perennials, things like salvias and cistus and agerantum. Now, they did well to start with, and the aim was to have this area filled out quickly. But 3 years on, they started to look daggy. So I cut them out and got rid of them. In fact, over here, I did something similar. I had tiger grass, a perennial tall grass screening that back corner of the fence and the house behind it. Again, it did very well. But every 2 or 3 years, it needs to be cut back right to the base. So you get rid of the old tired growth and get new, strong, vigorous growth. And once I did that, I thought, you know what? It's too bare. And this whole area is so visually important from our living room and from the back deck that I wanted something more permanent and year-round. And for that, I needed new plants. First up, it's Viburnum tinus. Now, this is a very popular hedging plant for good reason. It's got very dense, tight foliage. If left alone, it gets to quite a size, but it can be cut back regularly, even cut back hard to keep it more compact, which is what I'll do here. Now, in addition to the year-round foliage to screen out this fence line, the flowers are fantastic. It starts with beautiful pink flower buds in late autumn and then puts on masses of white flowers right through winter and into spring. And along here, on this garden bed, I've got room for two. I'm digging a hole to the depth of the root ball, but slightly wider. Then adding some well-rotted homemade compost and applying some organic fertiliser. Then backfilling with clean site soil. These are Pittosporum screenmaster, another very popular screening shrub, again, for good reason. They'll get up well above this fence line and can grow quite wide, but again, you can cut them back, keep them nice and tight, and I'll grow them just over this fence height here to screen out the neighbours behind. And they've got this beautiful fine foliage and dark stems. The best thing is they're really, really hardy. They'll just be watered here on grey water from drip line, and I've spaced them in such a way that they'll provide a nice backdrop here, and of course, being soft, if the kids do bounce off the tramp, once these are established, they won't get hurt. And last to go in is ground cover or prostrate rosemary. And I'm continuing this line along here on the top of this rockery. These plants have done very well. Now, these will grow to about 300 or 400 mil high, and they'll spread to about 1 metre and spill over here. It smells great, of course it's edible, and the flowers attract beneficial insects. Well, there we go. It's looking great. Now, despite the rain we've had today, these will all still need a good deep watering in to flush out any air around the root ball, particularly these advanced plants.
Terrariums are fascinating things. They're like worlds within worlds. And it's interesting to know that the first ever terrarium came about by accident in the 1820s when a botanist and insect collector left the lid off one of his insect jars and a fern spore germinated and grew into a plant. But there's certainly nothing accidental about these terrariums. They've been deliberately planted using indigenous plants of the sandbelt areas of Melbourne. And I love them, and I'm really looking forward to getting a lesson from a bona fide expert.
So this is Osteostipa stipoides, the coastal speargrass.
Oh, yes. Nice little plant, isn't it? Look how healthy that is.
Yeah, yeah. It gets a nice
well.
kind of bronze colour as well.
Meet that expert, horticulturalist and terrarium master builder, Patrick Honan. He derives his inspiration from the plants grown here at the St Kilda Indigenous Nursery Co-op, or SKINK as it's known to its friends. Patrick says the nursery's mantra is to propagate and promote Indigenous plant species. And because of this, they created terrarium-making workshops as a way of reaching new people. And there's your typical one.
Yeah, so that's typically the sort of old-fashioned terrarium, a flat-bottom jar sort of thing.
Yep.
But we found these containers work a lot better just for watering.
They look so neat.
Yeah, so if you were to water and you accidentally watered too much, it's a lot easier to get the water out of that than it would be a flat-bottom jar.
You'd have to start that all again.
Yeah.
Now, this one is something different.
Yeah, so that's a jararium, and it's a way of sort of presenting aquatic plants to people that they might not otherwise see. So these are the plants that we've found work really well in the terrariums.
What kind of characteristics do they have, Patrick?
Well, typically they're wetland plants, so plants that can tolerate really a lot of water inundation, but also periods of seasonal dryness.
Well, there's a perfect one. That's the little native violet.
Yeah, Viola hederaceae. The first thing that we want to do is put a sort of small handful of charcoal at the base of the vessel, not a huge amount, just enough to sort of cap it up.
Yeah, so it's just a little layer.
Yeah. So now we're going to add the coconut fibre and the perlite. We want to put in about 2 centimetres at the base of the vessel. Again, this is just acting as a sort of water reservoir to hold the water in there. So now we're going to add the potting mix. This is what we're going to be planting our plants into. We want to make sure that it has a little bit of moisture in it. It's not completely dry. Now's a good time to start thinking about the sort of shaping of your landscape. So if you want to put some height in there, maybe some little hills or mountains or peaks, now it's time to do some planting.
And obviously the taller plants go at the back where you built it up.
Yep, so again, thinking about that idea of depth, using the taller plants at the back and the ground covers at the front. So this is the Ranunculus papulentus. So we've only got about 4 centimetres of substrate. The good thing about using these sort of swamp wetland plants is a lot of them are suckering and sort of spreading, so they don't mind really just regenerating from a little sucker like that.
Right.
So we'll put this guy at the back just because he's a little taller. We want to get him in just a little bit anchored. So same thing again with the dichondra, just medium growth one. In a low light condition, it can sort of reach up quite a lot. So we're going to put him sort of in the middle.
Yep.
And we're just going to bring it down to about 4 or 5 centimetres. This is a really vigorous one, so he won't mind this treatment.
He's not screaming too much.
No, well, I'm presuming he won't mind.
Just backfill it a little bit so the roots are slightly covered up. Yep.
That's it. And finally, we've got the Celeria radicans, the pondweed. I'm going to put him just on the side here. A few handfuls of soil just to sort of anchor them in. Might look a little open now, but you have to think about leaving space for the plants to grow.
As you do in an ordinary garden situation.
Exactly, exactly.
you don't overplant.
You don't want to overplant, yeah. So what I'm going to do now is use some moss and some rocks.
Yep.
The moss will be the first thing that starts to dry up before the plants die, so that just gives you an idea that, hey, maybe I'm not watering enough.
Now, what about stones?
Yeah, so we've got some decorative sort of river pebbles, and that can be a really nice sort of bright contrast to the darkness of the soil.
That's pretty good. Now, would you water it in?
Yeah, so just water it in. Just gentle. If you've got a mister setting on your hose, that's a pretty good one. Again, the good thing with these ones is if you've watered too much, you can just tip it out.
Yeah.
I even like to flood them a little bit and then just tip it out, and the plants seem to appreciate that sort of saturation and then drying.
Would these be best to have inside or out on a patio?
Well, more light is better, but you've got to think about if you have them outside, they're going to dry out a lot quicker. So really just a well-lit windowsill or something like that.
I am really wrapped in these terrariums. If you want to make one, you've seen how easy it is. Why not go out and select some Indigenous plants to your area, give it a go, and you'll get years of pleasure.
Be sure to tune in next week on Good Friday at 7:30 and Easter Sunday at 12:30 because we have an hour-long Easter special for you.
These little creatures definitely say Easter. Chicks are so cute. And I'm going to show you how grown-up chooks, ducks and geese can be great helpers in the garden.
Well, getting ready for a few days away. Got my rods, got my swag, and I've got my holiday herb basket. And I'm going to show you how to make one a little bit later on.
What do native animals like to eat? Well, I'm at a wildlife sanctuary to figure that out, where they care for cute, furry and feathered creatures, so they don't go the way of this one.
And I'll be revisiting a few of my favourite stories with an Easter twist. Don't miss it.